All right, Gibran Bassil is the former foreign minister of Lebanon and speaks to us from Beirut. Gibran, first of all, how are you? Were you affected by this blast yourself?
Everybody was affected in Lebanon. Thank you for receiving me. I know it's getting great attention everywhere because this is a blast that is disastrous to the country. Everybody has somebody who was hurt or a place that was demolished. This is beyond imagination what has happened.
It is beyond imagination when I look at the video and the photographs, because I've been to Beirut and I know Gramezi Street and I know that area, and I'm just shocked.
Yeah, and on top that it adds to the many crises that we are going through. On top also of COVID-19, we have a deep financial crisis along with our usual political problems. So the country is really going through a very bad period where our main focus now is how to save it, because a country like Lebanon cannot go into chaos. This will be disastrous not only to Lebanon, it will be disastrous to the region and to the West. And everybody should work together on forbidding this.
You were a member of the government. You were still a member of parliament. The government was forced to resign. From all reports, there's political fragmentation. There are corruption issues, sectarian politics, mismanagement in government. The people are furious in the street. You know, I have to say, and I don't mean to make light of it in any way, but it seems like the situation is normal in Lebanon because you often seem to be rolling from one crisis to another.
You know, this is our history. The problem is people, especially those who are in power, are used to face problems and to go from a crisis to another. But this is not normal for the normal people, because at the end of the day, they get tired and they leave. They don't find jobs. They lack to share or to experience their human values, sometimes their freedom, their dignity. They feel it's touched and they can leave. So no, it's not normal for a small country like ours to take the load of all the problems of the region. To mention to you, one of them is having 200 refugees and displaced per square kilometer over the last 60 years for the Palestinians and 9-10 years for the Syrians.
How many Syrian refugees are you housing now? Is it still 1 million?
It was above 1 million. It was 1.5 million. We don't know the real figures now because during the last crisis, many had to leave. Then they stopped because of Corona. So I don't have at least the last figures, but I guess it's still above 1 million. But imagine 1 million over 10,000 square kilometers. So take it to a country like the US, having 100 per square kilometer, and take the figures, you will see if you can cater for 200 million, let's say, another nationality coming all of a sudden to your country.
The Hezbollah are blamed right now for a lot of the problems in the country, the economic mismanagement of the country. Lebanon was already on its knees, as you mentioned, financially before this happened. All of it aggravated by COVID-19. Would you honestly go back in a coalition with Iran and Syria's puppets?
No, actually everybody is in coalition in Lebanon with Hezbollah. You know, they are part of the parliament and they are part of every government since years. And the national unity governments, when we say a national unity government in Lebanon, it means that it includes everybody. So this is a matter also of our internal security, whether we go into accelerating our internal problems and we go into internal fights or no. I would say that Hezbollah is responsible and everybody in Lebanon is responsible for this level of corruption. Nobody, I believe, is helping in fighting corruption really, and nobody is really helping in following the path of reforms. Yes, this is where we, as Free Patriotic Movement, we blame everybody, including Hezbollah.
But you were in the coalition with them. And
Yes,
so
yes, we
you are, aren't you, by cooperating with that party, with that group, with an organization that the Americans still consider a terrorist organization, are you not encouraging this state within a state?
you know, in Lebanon, you know, Hezbollah are elected. They have the biggest portion of voters in Lebanon. So the problem, if anybody has a problem with Hezbollah, it's not with a small number of people, a group of people. It is a whole population.
Are they changing?
Frankly,
Are they changing? Because you talk about people, I don't mean to interrupt, but you talk about people being disillusioned right now with corruption and some of the problems. Is there another faction emerging, not within the Hezbollah, but maybe apart from the Hezbollah, where people say, okay, we don't want these parties that are aligned with Syria or Iran. We want Lebanese only parties that are going to try to get our economy and our lives back together.
The problem in Lebanon is a sectarian country, and we have what we call the consensual democracy. So everybody has to be on board, and every confession has a veto right. And Hezbollah and Amal, which we call the duo Shia, the Shia duo, they represent the big majority of the Shias, above 90%. So people still follow them. And excluding them is excluding a whole community. And this does not work in our consensual democracy, in our confessional system. So again, as I told you, it's not isolating or putting apart a small group of people. It is a whole community that is part of your society and that is embedded everywhere. So you cannot treat the matter of Hezbollah in Lebanon like being a terrorist organization, because they are not considered as such, because they are resistance against Israel. And second, I told you, you cannot accuse all the Shias of Lebanon of being terrorists and outlaws and put them outside the government and the parliament where they are elected.
Is that a mistake by the United States then, to kind of treat the Hezbollah as a terrorist organization and not understand fully the sectarian politics within Lebanon?
You know, this is a major difference that we have with the United States, because we believe that the policy of isolation that the US adopted before with many countries did not help. With Cuba, with North Korea, with Iran, with Iraq, when you had the dual isolation policy, yeah. I believe engaging with people and with countries, for a big country like the US, believing in democracy and the acceptance of the other, I think it's more useful, and it gave better results before. Isolation can create more extremism and more fighting, which is not helpful for our region.
What is the risk if countries that have a little more economic muscle, like Britain, like France, like Germany, like America, if they don't help Lebanon right now, what is the risk? The risk to peace, the risk to security in that region?
You know, the risk is what we have always warned about, that you have a chaotic situation in Lebanon, which will encourage people to go to extremism. To extremists and terrorists will take Lebanon as a hub, unfortunately, where immigrants will not be able to stay, the displaced and the refugees, and there will be an overflow from Lebanon towards the region. The same that happened from Syria towards Europe, and look how Europe were unable to sustain the number of Syrians that a small country like Lebanon sustained for over 9 years now. The whole continent of Europe was not able to absorb the number of Syrians that Lebanon absorbed. So imagine more and more will come. This will create a reaction from, you know, from the rightists in Europe refusing, and this will create more division within the Western societies also. Lebanon is a model of tolerance. When you break it and you make it fall, what will emerge from this? An empty model, which is extremism.
Let me come back to where we started, because I know you have limited time, and that is, first of all, do you believe, what is the cause of that explosion? Was it accidental?
I cannot frankly tell before the investigation ends, but I don't really believe into the conspiracy theory, nor do I believe in exceptional coincidences that came all together. The way the political results of that blast also are intriguing, and as if something was really prepared before, as if this is a way to have a different engagement with the Lebanon. I hope it will be a chance to open up to Lebanon again and to help the country to go over this crisis, because I think it will be a very big mistake to let Lebanon fall, because this is a place that is open, you know, to the west and to the east, and it can be bridging for peace, for stability in the region, and it can be really a good backyard for Europe, and the same for the Mediterranean. So whatever is the cause of that blast,
You know, you just
we
said
should,
two things to me, and I found them contradictory. And maybe because you haven't decided in your own mind, but just to be clear, you don't feel it was an act of terror, but at the same time, you can't discount that maybe it was. Is that essentially what you said?
somehow, because the evidence until now, nothing shows that there is something coming from outside. It can be a sabotage, but there should be something from outside that triggered it.
Look,
At the same time, the political results are as if, you know, you needed that blast to start a certain process. Well, what I'm trying to say is that process can take us to put more pressure on Lebanon and make it fall, or it can take us to another path that opens up to Lebanon and gives a chance for the country to breathe.
Gibran, when you've toured, no doubt. I know you're in Beirut. You've probably been going out to these neighborhoods and these buildings, and I've heard there are hundreds of buildings. I mean, is there a price tag on reconstruction, repair? What does the international community need to do to help Beirut right now?
You know, I think the best idea is for each country willing to help to take on its own the reconstruction of a building, of a street, or of a whole neighborhood. Because Lebanon, and especially Beirut, has an antique architecture that is inherited from the French Mandate and from Western architecture, and we should preserve it. And
You know, I think
everybody
talking
has
about
their
architecture is boring, but when you go to Beirut, you really understand love for architecture, because you drive through those streets and you look at those buildings and they're beautiful, and it is a lovely, lovely city.
Yeah, it is actually, it is the mixture of architecture resembles to the mixture of civilization, able to cohabitate and, you know, to live the experience of diversity.
Including
And this is how you see
the
Beirut.
bullet marks on the facades of buildings. Huh?
Exactly, new futuristic architecture alongside with an old house, you know, old architecture, all together. You know, they give Beirut its beauty, and this is what we should preserve. Beirut, it's not only architecture; it is an ancient school for democracy, for human rights. It was the first democracy in the East, and it should be preserved as a pioneer of human values in that part of the region where extremism is fighting and confronting moderation. And this is a big question for the West. What do you want? You want the Middle East a place to export for you terrorists, or to export for you, like Lebanese are integrated in your societies, to export to you brains and good people willing to add to your society? This is the big question. And this is where you cannot consider that whatever happens in Lebanon is irrelevant to your societies. We are you know, calling for peace. We are calling to preserve Lebanon as a model of tolerance. Don't turn it into another Libya, into another Syria, into another Iraq. We went through 15 years of war. We had enough, you know, and time is now for reconstruction, for prosperity. All we need is pressure to go through reforms, not pressure to break the Lebanese model.
Gibran Basile, you're very generous with your time, and it's so important to talk to you. And good luck to you and to all the
Thank you.
great my friends in Beirut. And we love the city. We wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.